and thanks for carving time to be here in this evening during this very busy time. So appreciate all of you just making time to be here. Before we get started, who here has heard about Green Card Voices before, or even the book Our Stories Here It Is Here? Raise your hand if you've heard about us or the book, or somehow in some ways. So just give me a shout out. Like, what do you know about Green Card Voices or the book so far?
Well, it's stories, short stories about immigrants that came to U.S. and kind of describing their struggle through the culture here, or success. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? We want to make sure that this space is like very interactive and that you're also a part of this, because this work really, this book is a co-creation process, and so it included not just us two, but tons of people involved in the community as well. So today is really just a very interactive space for all of us. Anyone else who wants to share? Yes, go
One
ahead.
thing I appreciate about Green Card Voices is immigrants telling their own stories. Nobody else is projecting their story onto the immigrant. It's immigrants telling stories of themselves and owning their own narrative.
Thank you. All right. Well, feel free to chime in at any time during this really just like informal um, event here with us. So my name is Julie Bain, and I'm a daughter of Hmong refugees. I'm residing here in St. Paul, in the Twin area. So my contribution to Green Card Voices, I mean, there's been a lot of transition. I was the program director, and then I transitioned to really just doing more like the co-editing, because my heart is in the community with the people itself, and so I wanted to transition from like the admin side into like working directly with the storytellers themselves. So my role has been really about co-editing with the community, with our partners, our funders, all the way to our storytellers themselves, and really amplifying their stories. So that's really the compass of what my role is. And then in regards to Green Card Voices, we are we're close to our decade years of established as a nonprofit organization based out here in Minneapolis. So we're not too far from here. And our mission is really to amplify the 50 million immigrants here in the U.S. and to amplify their own stories. So they get to share their own story by them, and they get to narrate that, whether it is through successes or triumphs, or whether it is just a little bit of the process from their homeland to getting here to the U.S., or whether they just want to share their journey literally just here in this time now. But they get to narrate exactly in their own authentic, raw voice, in their own stories, in their own ways, and express that to the audience here. And so a lot of our work is about amplifying first-person stories of immigrants, and through that we record and share their stories, and then we publish them into books. And so this goes into our community, and it goes into our classrooms. So a lot of the work that we do filtered through our educators, so they're bringing this back into their classrooms so that they can use it for their students and know that their students are represented in books, that they can see the possibility of different journeys or different roles and experiences in life, and that there isn't just this one narrative of how immigrants are, but there's multiple and diverse and depth to the immigration experience itself. So that's just a little bit background on Green Card Voices and what we do. And so we have recorded over 500 stories already, coming from 140 different countries. And these are all immigrants residing here in the U.S. So we have gone through about 6 different states here already in the U.S. So all the way from Minnesota to Wisconsin, North Dakota, California, New York, Atlanta, Georgia. And so through all of that, right, we've gone through different states and cities and working with multiple immigrants and refugees themselves. We said it's time to do a national collection. And so this graphic novel is, 11 storytellers that we selected out of 500, and Amara today is one of them. So he'll get to share his little experience of like how he was selected, how was being selected, what does that even mean, and what is it to share your story, but in a graphic novel format. And the reason why we did graphic novel is because it's the highest circulated selected genre right now for young adults and adults like yourself. So we said, okay, graphic novel gets this illustration side, but yet it also gets the more like the verbal text to it. So you're getting a little glimpse of everything, and it's an easy read for everyone. So within one book with 11 different storytellers sharing their story, and you can read this literally under an hour, right? And that, you don't even have to travel far to understand who immigrants are or their different stories are. It's literally one book, and you're learning about that in the moment. So Mara, tell me about being selected out of 500 different stories and what that meant when you heard about that news, and then you can share about your experience.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you guys for coming. It's great to be here. As she introduced me earlier, but my name is Amara Kumar, and my story didn't just start from when I came. Story started from back home, Liberia. Struggles and everything else that I went through before coming to Guinea. So this story only begins from how I came here. It didn't go back to where I came from. I think when I was selected, I don't know how it happened, but I got a call from Green Card Voices at Tia sent me an email, and I was wondering what Green Card was all about. So I did some research. Oh, okay. So I went to meet her for the first time, and she said that somebody recommended me to her, and I think it was a friend of mine, maybe Linda Freeman or something like that. They were looking for a refugee refugees or immigrants that are successful that came here, to tell their stories. And so that's how I got connected. I think the first story we did was on a podcast, right? It was on a podcast. We didn't do book with that. It's just part of that was taken to add that to this book. And it was such a great experience for me. So many people have so many stories, and to be selected is okay. Your story is really good. It's really appealing. We're gonna use this. So I didn't know what I mean. Like my story having an impact on somebody's life. That would mean for me that was great. And I can't get over it. Up to now, I can't even believe it. I'm sitting down here. So I've already done a speaking event at the Fabric. Was it 2 weeks ago? Which was very good. And these books, the title alone means a lot. Our stories carry us here. It kind of tells the story of each and every one of us here. Let's say Minnesota, for example, the Irish people came here with their own story. Scandinavian came here with their own story. How they came here, is a story that we all need to know, that connect every one of us. Because my story could be another person's story. So if I reading this book, and the way this book is written, I really love it because you never get fatigued. The drawing on it, these guys that did is incredible. All of these artistic drawing and the pictures, makes it much more easier for you to read. And I went through this book. I felt like I was almost reading my own story. That's how connected we all are. There were a few stories that were just exactly like my story. I mean, what's the Mary and Sergio's story? You know, part of the story was just like my story, and then you have this what's her name from Yemen. You know, all of the stories are so much connected, and it just tells me like if I don't know Irish or Scandinavians about how they came here, it will probably be exactly how I came into this country here, and that's why this book is so important that people read these things, kids read these things, because storytelling, all it does is connect us as people. You know, we get so much connected with each other instead of the mainstream media stories about scaring people who you are. You know, so if we all can just connect with each other and just from listening to stories and knowing about you and you knowing about me, it will bring us much more closer together than anything else. I don't know if I know you have read this book here. Anybody read the book yet? You read it? Which one did you read? What part? What part did you read?
Well, I know Ruth, so I read the whole thing, but
You read the whole thing?
yeah, but Ruth
Okay.
is somebody that I have a special affection for, so.
Well, I'm just gonna I want to read some talk about something that was very important to me here. Um, like you look at this book on page 192, where it talks about non-formal office. This was when I was already here. You know, this is when I was already here. This is very important to me because when I came here, you know, I'm gonna go back to how I came, but let me just take this story here. I came here, Minnesota, was just right 9/11, boom, I was sitting on the TV. 9/11 happened. I just had my daughter, my wife and I was actually at the gym, you know, working out, you know, and then all of a sudden in the gym, everybody just started running, you know, weight are flying all over the place, and then my client is like, "Oh, all right, we gotta go." I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Something is happening." So I jumped and then, you know, in the fitness room they had television and all we see was a big smoke, and still I didn't have any idea, and I just jumped in my car, you know. Well, it was maybe like 5 minutes for the gym, so I ran home, and then my wife was home with the baby we just had. She's like, "Okay." I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Well, they just pumped in the water center." And then as I sat down, the second plane came. Boom! I was like, "Whoa, this is like a movie," you know. So I jumped off. Okay, what we're gonna do now? Because at that time, my family, you know, in the Civil War in Liberia, has gone through a lot, and me being a refugee and struggling to come to America, did all the fighting. And when I came, my wife and I had struggled to fight for them to bring them over so that they can have a home, a place to live. They can be people of their own. And then the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that was, okay, that's it. They're done. They're not coming no more. You know, they're not coming no more. And my wife said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "What? The bomb of the World Trade Center? Not African. Africa is going to be blamed for it, even though it's not African." And then she started laughing about it. And, you know, so I was like, "Well, it's true." So then at that moment, you're talking about Lutheran Social Service, right? Okay, Lutheran Social Service was people that actually helped my family to come here to America. And that's how this non-common story is kind of attached to, you know, Lutheran Social Service. And at that time, my wife and I already came to Minnesota. We got a place that when my family comes, we're gonna move to Minnesota because she's from Eau Claire, you know, and she went to school, you know, graduated from Winona State University. She knows this place very well. She didn't feel comfortable with New York, so we gotta come here because your family has to be in Minnesota because this is Lutheran Social Service, our big office is in Minnesota. You have to live within the sponsored state. And so we already had a house, we're just waiting to pick them up at the airport. They were supposed to be coming September 17th, and 9/11 happened. So that just freezes everything. So they spent 2 years, no message, nothing. All refugees traveling was frozen. Even though I remember Bush gave authority to INS to allow 80,000 refugees to come into the country. But most of the refugees that were coming from like Russia. It was all like Russian Jews and stuff like that. Africa was just frozen. So I'm like, but wait a minute, this is not fair. I mean, what did Africa do with the whole bombing thing? They got to freeze. You know, my family was supposed to come here 9/17, 9/11 happened, now they can't come. So that's when I jumped on, like, okay, because we were already in Minnesota. I'm like, I'm gonna go to non-commerce office right after the election. So I was the very first person, the very first job that non-commerce had in his office to work with anybody, any community member was me. I think they still have that story there. And so I walked into the office, they were still trying to set up, and their kids work out, as you can see in this book. She talked about thank you for meeting. I told her about thank you for meeting me, and she actually welcomed me. This whole story is here, and I telling her, hey, I'm here to see you because my family is supposed to come to America now September 17, but September 11 happened, they couldn't come, and it's been 2 years they're not coming. So I want to know why, because Africa didn't have anything to do with the bombing of the World Trade Center. And I've done a lot of research. President Bush had given 80,000, opened the door for 80,000 refugees to come into the country for America to have. But all of those are coming from Russia and other areas. Africa, there's nothing, not one. How did you know that? I said, well, let's do the research. And then she found out, she said, yeah, you're right. So she got really anxious more than me. She said, okay, I'm gonna make sure that your family comes to America within 2 weeks. And exactly what she said. She just did, just like phone calls. So it's telling me how much our representatives and senators can do if we walk up to them and put the problem right in front of them and tell them, I need you to do this. You need to do this. And I can see how much help they can get, because she said, okay, this is the first job, and I'm gonna do this to make sure that your family comes to America. So that is the story you see here when we talk about non-commerce often when you read that whole story here. This is Jen Jones. She was non-commerce case worker. At that time, but she really hit the nail. She really helped me out, and there was a lot of calls in Africa to the embassy and all that stuff. And the next thing I looked, she called me, Samaria, your family is coming next week. I'm like, my family is coming next week? She said, yes. I was like, wow. So I couldn't believe it. So, and it was real. So this is how the end part of my story, my dream, to make sure that my family comes here into America started. But then it became like a riot between Lutheran Social Service and non-commerce office, because non-commerce trying to take credit, but then Lutheran Social Service is like, oh, wait a minute, no, we're taking credit for this because we sponsor everybody. We sponsor Amara family. We pay for the tickets. We did everything. You can't just be on national TV and not mention your own name. Come on, So there, it became a problem where the media was kind of like, I had my little week of film. Media was all over, going this way, going that way, because the whole thing was politicized now. But we were able to work it out. Lutheran Social Service also said, okay, you know what? We're gonna do our own press conference. So they set a whole different press conference and inviting me to speak, and with Quinn national TV to make sure that they get the credit for it. But Malcolm also got the credit for taking on the case right away and making sure my family gets here immediately. So that's that part of the story that we talk about at the end. That's when you see here. This is at the airport, that ends the story where my family comes here, because that was my biggest dream. That was my American dream, making sure that my family comes, from the war in Liberia. And now they all graduate, all college graduate. My one sister, who was blind, very, very challenged, has a master's degree now, in human resources. And so, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I tell you, coming to America, most people don't realize how much immigrants really respect this country. We do. And a lot of time it makes me wonder, how much do people really know? How much do people really know? Do people really know their own story of how they came here? Do people really know how this country was built? And that's why this book is so important for all the different immigrants. And in fact, there's a story of this guy in this book. This Jamaican guy that is a neurologist, right?
So in the story, what's so unique about this, like what Amara mentioned, like this is just a glimpse of just him just share his story
Yeah.
to all of you, right?
Yeah.
So then how do we make sure that everyone gets to hear his story?
Yeah.
And so, which is why we were able to, translate that all into graphic novel format. So then it's accessible and easy for someone, as a teenager who can literally read through this and understand, okay, wow, this is such a powerful, such a challenging experience that an immigrant had to go through. Now I understand. So it makes me wonder what my peers in my classroom, or maybe my family's histories are, where I get them to start having conversation beyond the book itself. And what we did with this book was we were very intentional with the whole entire process, which is a co-creation process where we paired the storyteller like Amara to an illustrator who is also an immigrant or refugee themselves. So then for Amara, he was paired with Ahmed, who is Ugandan, and he's based out in London, right? So this is global work that we're doing. So then both of them were to work together, and he shared experience like working with him for the first time, meeting him, and the time zone. And
that was very interesting. Hamid is they call him the machine. That's his name. That's his nickname, the machine. Because through our conversation, and the guy is just incredibly smart, and you guys did extremely well, being able to pair people together that really work along. The time it was very challenging because we are like 5 or 6 hours different, and I have to be to the gym, and that's when he wants to work. He wants to be able to do the work, in the morning, because in the morning for it's like noon now, break time. He wants to be able to sit down, but I'm just getting out to go to work, and then I'll get the email. We gotta have a meeting like 9 a.m. I'm like, God, we're playing 9, 10, 7, 8, 9. I'm gonna sit out here. But I had to work it out because, this book was so important, And I noticed that some of the time I'll miss the schedule, right? And I'll be driving home, I'll be training, and I'll see Julie phone ring. I'm like, ooh, I missed the time. And he'll be like, hey, Amari, are you ready? I'm like, I am not. It's okay, we'll just reschedule them because you have to be there because I have to, because I met us there, we work with them, but I have to be there. And I'm like, shit, I'm wasting people time. I have to make sure that I get to this in the next time, And so it was all these little things. Putting this book together was a lot of work, it was really a lot of work, a lot of thinking. And Hamid is like, okay, describe yourself. How did you look like at that time? So he's thinking, how he's gonna put a graphic novel together, how I'm gonna look like in the graphic novel, So he's like thinking, okay, what was your position? Okay, what did you do? Like especially when we were in Guinea, when I first met my fiance, my wife now, my kid's mom in Guinea. So that I met her. There's a part of the story that I didn't get to tell because we wanted to summarize everything. So I met her. She was a Peace Corps, in Guinea, and that story is in here. And she had already served 2 years, but she loved it so much when she came back. She went back again to live another 2 years in Guinea because she loved the people. And so it was during that time I was working with the BS. At that time, I already left all of my struggling back, in the village and came to the city. I tried hard, started to work. Things were getting better for me little by little. And I ran into them when I was going home from work. And at that time, 4 o'clock, it was traffic is everywhere. You can't get a car. And there's 2 white ladies walking down the street. No car, they're looking behind them, they're walking behind them on the highway, and they can't get a car. So I told the driver, I said, you gotta stop for these people. That's how my wife and I met. She was like, I said, stop for them. And then they stopped. And then so they thought it was a passenger car, so they ran. Then the guy said, oh, you're getting, And they're like, oh, thank you so much. Oh man, how much it costs? We're going to the Peace Corps hall, to the Peace Corps place, the Peace Corps headquarters. So I told the driver said, oh, I don't know, I saw the driver, I know the place, right by the dry cleaner. So I'm going to actually. So we went there, the guys, it's like, so how much? Then the driver's like, no, this guy paid for you guys. He paid for you guys. They're like, oh my God. this is the very first time we have ever gotten any free thing for anybody here. People are nice, but because we are white, we come from America, everybody think we get money. Everybody's asking us for money, you know. Nobody give us anything. Say, this is the first time we ever get free thing. You know, so I'm like, well, it's because of all the commercials, you know, you put on TV about your country. So people see that like, wow, there's a lot of money over there. So we dropped them off. And then the next day, my sister said to me, hey, did you pick up 2 white girls, go home? I said, yeah. She said, they told me that some guy picked them up. They were describing you, and I said, that's my brother. But they didn't believe me. So I wanted to ask them, like, what? I said, that's weird. So that I tell them they're going to the same French school because they were taking French classes. It was a French-speaking country. So then my sister told me, yeah, it was my brother. So got him on the show. We, you know, put us together. We went on a date. That's how I met her. So then we started dating right after that. And then she had to leave. It's in the book. So I said, why are you here? She said, oh, I was a Peace Corps, but my 2 years got done. And I came back just to spend another 2 years to learn the language. So surprisingly, she spoke my language very, very well. And she writes it well. You know, so before I met her, she already know how to speak the language. You know, she actually wrote the language, you know, the book like that for all Peace Corps that go to that country. You know, little words to remember. Hello, how you doing? How are you? Let's go to school. Come on, you know, shake my hand. She wrote all of that. You know, I was like, wow, okay. So she could speak, and then my friends come to visit me, and then they were like, oh, where you get this white girl from? I'm like, hey, she speaks the language, so just speak to her. I'm like, this is just my friend, you know, we just met. So that's how I came to America. So when she came, she decided if I wanted to come for her. I said, of course, you know. And so we had to be engaged in order for me to be able to come here, you know. So we had to, it's called fiancé visa. So that's how I first came to America through her help. And you see the first page I talked about the date she must have had with my sister. It's all in the book here. And you know, to the point where when we lived in New York, that was another a very cultural shock for me was when we got into the train station, and the first person I met in the train was asking me for dime. I'm like, what? So all this about America is great. There's money everywhere. Somebody's in the train asking me for dime. You know, wow. So that was shocking to me. So I was like, wow, this is not going to be easy. Somebody asking me for dime. I just can't, you know. So, and then we lived in Harlem. And at that time, Harlem was very, very rough. Very rough. So I had no idea, no experience, nothing. Yeah, me jumping off. It's the storage here. This is the spot we jump off. We want to go to the Blockbuster. Was really on the block at that time. So I got up, but she knew what was going on. So I got up and had her hand, and we were going to Blockbuster to grab a movie to watch a movie. And my guy is standing on the street, and one guy goes, "Is here, hey, brother, hey, what you doing with the white girl?" You know. And so I just look up behind me like that, you know, and I'm hearing the other guy, yeah, he's talking to you, yeah. What you doing with white girl? You know, and then on the other side I hear this other girl saying, yeah, he's cheating on the sisters, you know, Africans. That's all they do, you know. So it was all these things. So I'm like, wow. So I was like, okay, there's a dime, and now there's people yelling at me for working with somebody else. So that was my first experience of race, because it was never an issue back home. You know, I never got, you know, she and I was in Africa. We walked everywhere. People were just happy, you know, everybody just happy. Nobody really cared about what race you are. Nobody even see you. They don't even look. Nobody cared. So it was nothing like that. Then all of a sudden, here am I in America, what's supposed to be the greatest country, and now all of a sudden, my first racial experience, like, wow, right in your face, you know. What are you doing with a white girl? You cheated on the black sister, this, and that. So it kind of like make everything just big. I just wanted to go back home. At that moment I've had it, I just want to go back. I know, but my heart was dead. You know, it was just like dead at that point. Everything was just dead. I was like, wow. I wish I was back home. I mean, this is like a, you know, what is this? So then I got the blockbuster, and then Connie's like, don't worry about it. That's all they are. And I didn't even watch the movie because I was just pissed mad the whole time. Why would him really care about who you are and whatever happening, you know? And then the second experience, go to the grocery store and coming out, two guys, boom, shooting each other dead. And I had my friend was with me, and he just left and went. And now I saw that just add on. I was like, okay, come from a war to a peaceful place, and then another war. This is like living in the. This is like living living life, but you're really in war zone because anybody can shoot you anytime they, and say call for self defense or whatever. It's just like if living in a war zone. So I started telling my friends, I said, America is like a war zone, you know that, right? So it's like people living, but they can shoot you anytime. Anybody can be killed because guns everywhere. It's a complete war zone. And then my friends like, yeah, it's kind of like that right now. I actually have few friends, I didn't even mention that actually went back home because they were so afraid that it's like, I gotta go back home. I can't be here. They went back home. Whatever money they had, one of them is called Bilo. He actually goes to China now. He doesn't come to America. That was it for him. After that gun shooting and stuff like that, he's like, no, I'm done. He's like, I'm gone. This is war zone. We can't come from the war in Africa, and then we come here, and then people shooting everybody, and people say you have a right to have a gun. And so, and it was so scary that even when I go to the grocery store, if somebody look at me, I'll bend my head now because I'm scared. Or maybe when I look at them, they're gonna take the gun out and shoot me. So I passed that little rough time until I became comfortable myself and started living, like everybody else in America, and started getting it started getting rough too. So I'm going to the grocery store, I be acting rough, but like, walking like that. You gotta have that rough phase, Start acting rough. I was like, geez, everybody's personality, they kind of change because you gotta be rough. And what that does to the society, it changes people completely. It changes this out. It's a great nation, but that violence, changed the society completely. So, I think the last time I mentioned about the socialization settings of this country is very weak, and that's because of that. We have so many problems. They have a very, very weak socialization setting because when people are paranoid and scared, that's when they want to have things to protect themselves, guns and all that stuff. Paranoid. It's paranoid that brings all those things, and that's because of the socialization setting. It's very, very weak. And so people not having, not being able to, I don't know, interact with people, and, they see this person, he looks different, they get afraid. And so they have that paranoid living lifestyle, and so they need to think that I have to have a gun. I have to have a gun to protect myself. And those things is because I feel like we're not so connected in so many ways, and it can cause all of these problems. And this book, when you read it, and it gives you such a good peace of mind. And you're like, wow, so I'm not the only person that felt this, or I'm not the only person that had this story, or I'm not the only person that experienced it, or a lot of people experience this too. And I'm sure that every one of you, when you read a book, you'll feel something, you'll learn something that connects with you. Definitely have to, you'll have to connect with you somehow. Right, Julie?
Yeah, there's 10 stories.
There's
right?
10 stories, yeah.
And Amara is just one of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Like, you expanded your story beyond what was, shared in the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Because 10 stories, we don't want 200 pages. That'd be too much,
Yeah,
right?
too
So
much.
each story has about 10 to 15 pages. So, think of a 10 story that has about 10 to 15 pages long. That is just a graphic novel, just small text, and then you get really full, vibrant illustrations to it. That is so true to the character and the emotions that is embodied with the whole entire feelings of the entire journey itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like something that Amar didn't mention was that wasn't upfront is that he was in an interracial marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was deemed wrong.
Yeah.
And people didn't like that.
Mhm.
Right? That's one issue that came through and it arises and caused conflict.
Yeah.
Some other stories that that a lot of folks also experience was racism and like the culture shock around that as well. Like for example, Amara mentioned about the Jamaican neuroscientist. His name is Craig Moody, and he currently lives in California. But he did a lot of. He first came to Minnesota to do his undergrad in McAllister and then to the U of M. But all the way that whole journey, he only had his green card. He did it. He was in the process of getting his green card, and it wasn't until literally last week when I met with him. He's like, the whole process is done. After 20 years, he said he feels liberated and free. That there is no one, no counselor in the back of his mind, or like telling him, or maybe could potentially be pulling him back. Where he spent half of his life, maybe more than half of his lifetime here in America compared to his home country. And for him, it was a very challenging experience because he's like one of the smartest person. He came through a visa where it was an Einstein visa, literally. That's what he holds. Is that he has all these research and his education background, and he was here to make an impact for the whole entire world. But to know that he can't make the difference because he didn't have the right visa to reside here, to stay here, and to make that impact. And so he worked really hard. He stayed in Jamaica for literally just like a couple of months ago for a whole month, just stuck there and trying to get everything fixed and make it right and process through. And that was his gateway to finally say, I'm free, and now he can come back home to the U.S. and do his research, do his education, and make that impact. And so now he's thriving as one of the few Jamaican neuroscientists out there working on behalf of prevention around mental health. And that's an immigrant doing that work in our community. For you, your family. We had a story where two of our storytellers, which is a couple, they were supposed to be here, but unfortunately they're quite sick today, so they weren't able to join us. But Mary Ann and Sergio, they're both couples. One is from the Philippines and the other one's from Mexico. And they're the co-directors of one of the only indigenous culture arts nonprofit here in Minnesota. And they're thriving as well. And that it was such a hard process for them because they have to go through gentrification to make sure that they can own this nonprofit, right? That is just supporting youth in arts, in their culture, in their heritage. And that would also strip away, like a lot of the barriers that came was very systematic, right? It was multiple layers that were just bearing them down to just obtain very simple survival necessity things for them and their community and their family. So that's another story. I mean, there's so many stories that I can go through, but that's a few of them.
Yeah, and then talking about that because when Con and I just I think his stories here, we decided to go. She decided to go get her master's degree in public health. So she applied for Tulane University, which had the best public health, one of the best public health schools in the country. So, and at that time, I just graduated high school, was going to college when the war started. So she's like, well, we can go together, and and I said, yeah, I'll love to. So I applied to Tulane when I got in. So she was going master, and I was going to go for undergraduate. So then we were in Tulane, but we wanted to live off of campus because we married, So, but the hardest thing that ever happened to us was finding a place because we're interracial. and the black population is a lot. But why there's so much big difference between black and white? That's why I couldn't get. I said, there's so many black people in New Orleans. Why there's so many big different, you know? So in New Orleans, it's kind of like you see this neighborhood is very very rich, and then the next neighborhood right next door is really poor, and the next one is really rich, and the one's really poor. That's how New Orleans are built like that. It's so weird. And so we was having a really hard time looking for a place. And everywhere we go, nobody, it's like, nope, 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 nope. So luckily we went to this guy in the book, and he's like, come on in. And we were looking for a place to rent. So, well, my wife and I attended Tulane, we, long time ago, and we actually moving to the East Coast, and we're gonna rent this place out. So if you want it, you can have it. So we were so happy, and then he's like, "Did you guys have fun finding class?" I said, "Well, it's been difficult because he's like, well, that's because you're interracial couple. Your interracial is gonna be very very hard for you guys um, to find a place. New Orleans is just one of those places that is not really open to that yet. Even though there's a lot of interracial kids around." So we rented his place, and then what I find out too, he said that he's traveled the world. He's been all over Africa. He's been to a different. I said, okay, that's why. So traveling and interacting with different people also open our minds, because he's traveled, and so he knows about Africa, he knows about Europe, he knows everything. So he understands, and so this kind of tells all that, us interacting with each other and knowing, lack of not knowing you, it makes it put fears in me depending on what people say to me about you. You see, so the mainstream media or whatever, or what people hear about this particular race or that particular race, and people now willing to actually really put the time into really knowing that, they just stick to that particular story, and now when they see that person, they get afraid. So some of these racist things is a lack of connection with people. People are not connected. They don't know each other, and so that fear, with together with the media and what people are saying, it just all pile up, and so then we become, we antagonize each other for no reason, while we could just be good friends and good family, and that's the kind of thing this book tells, a lot of those things, and it really connects people together when you read a book. I read a lot of these stories here, and I really fell in love for a lot of them. So in New Orleans, after we got to CNN, all of a sudden, even though I'm in school, but I still got arrested. So I still got arrested even though I'm going to school. I still got arrested by the police. They just give a description of a black man, how he looks like this, look like that. Oh, yeah, that's him there on the bicycle. That's him. He's black. He's a big guy. So that's him. Somebody did something, and they just decided it was me. Well, that's him right there. That's a black guy. He's on a bicycle, so it's him. And that's all of a sudden I try to get to my friend's place, come from school. My backpack was going to work on an assignment. I said, 5 squawk out, whoo, came from nowhere. I had no experience. I said, what's going on? So it was like, put your hands up. I had never experienced anything like that before. So I didn't know when the police say, hey, stop, put your hands on you, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. I had no idea, And so, get off my bike and try to take my bike back and so that. Now you can't do that. You're gonna get shot. Well, how am I supposed to know that? There's no specific class teaching to say the immigrant, okay, hey, when you guys come in, police stop you, don't put your hand in your bag, don't do this, don't do that. They don't teach you that. And now all of a sudden I got stopped by the police, and I told him, he's like, it's a good way to get shot, and they're so loud. Like the voice alone is not a voice to deactivate anything. That police siren and that yell inside, it doesn't deactivate anything. It's not a good way to deactivate anything. You create more problems. So sometimes I said, what does police take these specific class or how to deactivate situations? Because that's not a activation technique, like put mic on, scream really loud in the neighborhood, scares the hell out of people, and you think you're deactivating. No, you're making the problem worse because that person is all like that, is paranoid, it's scared, So they do stuff like that, and then you all like you don't even know what to do because you're so scared. And when people are scared, they do things unexpectedly, because you're young. That car could put like this, and then you think he's putting your hands back, but because they're yelling, that affect them, and then you shoot them, boom. But you don't have no idea that that yelling really affected them. And so I was so scared. And then they put my hands on the wall, they came and checked me, did all of those things. I'm like, I'm a student at Tulane, I just came from school. I'm going to my friend's place, going to do assignment. He has my ID, trying to show them everything, but no, And so they put my hand on the wall and stuff like that. And then for all of those things, look at me, oh, that's not him. That was, yeah, it's not him. Yeah, disgrace me, everything. Oh, that's not him. When they just get back in the car, boom, they left. Nah, yeah, we're sorry, nothing, nothing. They just got in the car and left. And so I look weird on the street. Everybody looking at me like, oh, who is this guy? So I just go into my friend's house. I was so scared. I didn't even get to do assignment that day. And the next day, it was just so bad because of all of those things that goes on. And I think it's really it's something that that people don't talk about, but it's really heartbreaking when you have police officer that's supposed to protect you, but they're really very biased towards any kind of people. It leaves you with nothing, but you don't trust them no more. And so those things not supposed to be happening at all. And I wish that the whole thing that happened with George Floyd would do a lot to change some of those things, And I think a lot of things have been looked at since that happened to see how they can help in that route. But I think we need to do more. Anybody have anything to say again? So because
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but we are getting close to the hour here.
Yeah.
So if we want to open it up for questions, having maybe 5-10 minutes of Q&A, questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Anybody has anything to say?
First of all, I just want to say that these are all for you. So these are posters of all of our storytellers, and then some of our dynamic work that we have in the bookmark for you. So keep that for you before you leave.
Can you talk a little bit about the selection process? I mean, you had so many stories to choose from. Did the board get together, or how did you decide who was going to tell their story in the book?
Yeah, so we have recorded over 500 different stories already, and ambitiously, we wanted to make sure we can do all of it, right? But unfortunately, we can't based on the timeline that we had, so we wanted to narrow down to at least 10 to 12 stories. And we looked through each of the, out of all the 500 stories, we want to make sure that each of the story was coming from different continents and sharing different experience, very different, diverse immigration journeys and experiences. So one story is not like the other one. All the stories are unique and different in their own way, but we wanted to make sure that each of the story in this graphic novel was coming from different continents or different immigration journeys and experiences and different issues that they also have experienced, and to bring those experiences and those issues to the forefront. And so we went through a very thorough selection of who can we select, but also who had the time and commitment to also be a part of this whole journey, because like Amar mentioned, it was not an easy process for this whole book. It took us about 2 years to finish this. And so that's really the selection, because storytelling was just one selection. And then after that, we also had to think about who our illustrators were. Illustrators it was actually quite easier. People doubted us that, are we going to get any immigrant or refugee illustrators? And literally we sent a nomination and we have about 100 submissions. So we knew there's artists and illustrators out there just waiting to be part of a project like this that is so intentional, but also creating the storytelling aspect that is authentic. And so we made sure that when we were selecting the illustrators, they were from the same geographical, cultural, linguistic background as our storytellers. So then when the peer came, it was a very natural match, right?
Very natural match.
Very natural match where we're not having someone from, for example, we're not having someone from Idaho, drawing someone from Vietnam who has no clue about the story, right? That can take years and like lots of research, and we didn't want that because we have such a short timeline to make sure that this book is in a timely manner published and out to the world. So that's just a little glimpse of the selection of the storyteller and illustrators.
All right, I just want to say thanks for sharing your story, and I thought it was really moving how you talked about stories connecting each other. I think that's something that, a lot of people are looking for connection, and just, that's a huge part of life, and so just, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
To share it in that way.
Stories really connect us, and that's what's missing in this country. A lot of things that were taught way back, were taught in a negative way, and so that both fears in people, and that's the message that stays there, that stays there. Like, remember when I went to your fabric, and I talk about a friend of mine written an essay, he was just being sarcastic, and in his essay he put, the beginning he said, all white people are criminals, and then all black people are racist. And so then my friend said, no, it should be the other way around. Because that's what has been taught way back. During slavery time, way back, well, black people are criminals. And then you get the white people, the black people saying, well, all white people are racist. So these are the things that have been taught in both ways. And so people take that and the media fly with it, flies with it, and now willing to actually go into studies to really know, let me know the fact, let me know this person. And they just take that story and they keep it with them. And they go with that everywhere. It doesn't matter what. And so that fear that is put in them, don't want to talk to you because you're criminal. That's what I've been taught the whole time over dinner. Oh, this guy, he's white, he's a redneck. I don't want to talk to him no matter what, he's racist. So people grow up like that, kids grow up like that. It's very hard to take that away from people unless you share stories, such as stories like the books, like the kids reading these kind of things. And then you can see the connection, how you bring up together to get some of those negative things away from people. And that's what is missing in American society. That's why I talk about the socialization setting is very weak, and it started from way back. And how do we fix that is through storytelling. Meeting and connecting with each other. A neighbor, whether it can be neighbor or whatever, to connect with each other. Because that's the only thing that can break that barrier. If I know you and you know me, it puts no fears in me. I can talk to you anytime. But if you don't know me, based on my story, you're gonna start to judge me on that way. Unless people who are, I call them educated people of the society, people who are open-minded. Because if you're an educated person in the society, whether I tell you my story or not, you know that you're not going to have that racial feeling thinking about me, But it's very, very few people are like that before, and so that's why it's very important that we tell story. And Green Card Voices, this is such a great thing. You guys work really, really hard, and then especially working with Hamid. Me being a Muslim, I didn't know because when I first started working with him. And then it was on Friday, he was trying to, I said, you know what, I gotta go to the mosque today, Friday. He said, oh, you're Muslim? I said, yeah, he got excited. He got so excited. He said, I'm a Muslim too. He said, I'm a Muslim. So we, it was one time he called me where you guys didn't get it. He said, I'm Muslim too. He got really excited. And he started talking about different things, in London and that kind of stuff like that. I'm like, well, you didn't have to tell me, didn't you? You made me, I know you're a Muslim, but I didn't ask you that. So it was really a very good connection, and we started talking about Africa. We were talking about London and different things. At the same time, working on the book. It was really that was amazing connection with everybody. You guys, how you guys did it, it was amazing. It made the work so much easier because he could relate to me. Somebody could relate to him, and it made the work very very. It was a very very powerful and very good job work they did. I was surprised. I was very shocked, especially when they first sent the first graphic novel, the first sketch he did. I'm like, how did that just imagine me in his head, and they just he just kind of like draw something based on his imagination. And this is the guy that actually worked on. I think he worked on what's it called? This movie called this kid movie guy, Dumbo.
Oh, I mean Hamed.
Ahmed, yeah, he worked on Dumbo. He was the graphic guy, the guy that did the graphic something with that movie called Dumbo. Because he's wild, he's going the machine. So I was happy. I was like, oh wow, I'm working with this guy, it was really very very good connection. But thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, we have to